Okay, I'm gonna do a power steering fluid flush and, well, drain and refill. We're not flushing, just a drain and refill on this 2006 Ram 1500 with the 5.7 Hemi. Pretty simple job on these things. The easiest way to go about it is you pull the power steering hose off of the cooler on the bottom of the radiator. So I'm probably going to pull this hose right here and let it drain into a drain pan. Right. Just like so. To make this job go a little bit faster, I just put a 5/8 inch heater hose on the power steering cooler and route that to my drain pan. Allow the other hose to sit there too. I'm gonna start the engine for a couple of seconds and let it pump out. I don't want to run the pump completely dry. I'm just gonna run it for a couple of seconds to let the fluid come out. Okay, so what I did here is I filled the reservoir up a couple of times with fresh ATF, which is what this truck calls for. Filled it up, and then I started the engine for a couple of seconds, let it drain out, filled the reservoir back up, same thing, started up again, a couple of seconds, and that way I know I got all the old fluid out. So now I'm just going to reconnect this hose. Remove my flush hose here, put this other hose back on, and then move on to filling the reservoir back up and bleeding the air out of the system. Okay, I'm going to put this hose clamp back where it came from. Come on. Nice tight fit. And then this little clip here to keep the hoses from chafing on each other. Just gonna clip that back on in their proper spot. Right there, just like so. Hoses aren't touching. Just wipe up any residual fluid that might be dripping off here. And we'll go fill the system up. Okay, well, because I live in Alaska, I decided I'm going to use a fully synthetic ATF for this. This truck calls for Dexron 3 for the power steering fluid, not the Mopar ATF plus 4. It has to be the Dexron. Sometimes it's known as MD3 because GM no longer allows anyone to use a Dexron name. Anyway, this is the synthetic stuff that I'm going to use. It works better here in Alaska where we have really cold winters. In my location, sometimes it gets down to -40, and yeah, that's without the wind chill, so that's pretty darn cold. So anyway, I'm just gonna use a funnel to fill it up a little bit at a time, and periodically I'm gonna stick the cap back on and fill it up to, well, this engine's kind of warm, so I'm going to fill it up to a little over the add mark on hot. Okay, the next thing I like to do is lift the vehicle off the ground. I'm not going to be getting back underneath it, so I'm not going to bother with the jack stands. So once the level is full, we'll run the steering wheel back and forth manually. Before we even start the truck up, to try to bleed any air that might be in the rack before we start it. And before we start it, we'll check the fluid level too. And as you might be able to see here, the fluid level dropped down just a little bit after I bled the system without the vehicle running. Probably can't see it because it's so light, but the level dropped down to the add mark. So I'm just going to add a little bit more before I start it up. Okay, got the fluid top back up, and now I'm going to start the engine and turn the wheel left to right. You don't want to hold it to the stop on each side. Just as soon as you bump it, turn the wheel the other direction. All right. Now we're gonna check the fluid again. Okay, so we ran the steering wheel left to right a few times until things started to feel smooth. And now we'll shut the engine back off, and I'm going to check the reservoir to see if the fluid level dropped. Usually it drops a little bit as it burps the air out. Well, as you can see here, it's not even on the dipstick. So what I'll do is I'll put more fluid in it until it's between the add and hot mark. And I'm going to put the cap back on, start the engine back up, and run the steering wheel left to right a few more times. And then check the fluid level again. And we're just going to keep doing that until the fluid level stays steady. And you want it between the add and the hot mark on a hot engine, and add and cold on a cold engine. Okay, so I had to top it off a few times and start it up and turn the wheel, and I think we got to a point now where the fluid level has settled, and yeah, it looks like the level is perfectly in between full hot and add. So I'm going to call that a win. And that's how you do a power steering drain and refill on a 2006 Ram 1500. This one's got the 5.7 Hemi. I guess since we're here, I'm going to go ahead and check the oil. But pretty easy job.